things like ice cream, things like croissants, they have equal numbers or even more calories coming from fat than from carbs. But it's not so much about the fat, it's about the combination of fat and carbs together. That's what really makes a food dry. It makes our brains crave more food. It makes us go yum.
Welcome to the Legendary Life Podcast, where it's all about taking control of your health, losing fat, transforming your body, and living the life you deserve with celebrity fitness trainer and longevity enthusiast, Ted Ryce. I've been in the health and fitness business for over 23 years now. And when I think back to when I first started, the things that I believed. For example, I used to believe that carbs made you fat because carbs raise insulin. Insulin's a fat-storing hormone. Therefore, carbs make you fat. I also believed that the chemicals in our environment were making me fat or making it hard for me to lose fat. Now, fast forward 23 years, I don't believe those things. Now, I want to say I'm concerned about some of the chemicals in the environment and those types of things. But when it comes to fat loss, I'm really clear on what people's biggest struggles are because I run a coaching program where I help people lose fat literally every single week. And here's what I'll tell you. The big thing that stops people isn't their age, their hormones, carbs, or even their workout program. It's hunger and food cravings. So today in this episode, we're going to get into the 5 little known ways to control your hunger and cravings so you can get lean. What is up, my friend? Welcome to another Real Talk Friday with your host, me, Ted Ryce. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, I coach entrepreneurs, CEOs, and other high-performing professionals in fat loss. I help them transform their body. But the way I do it, it's a little bit different than the way other folks do it. In fact, I get a lot of people coming from other coaching programs to work with me. And in this episode today, you're going to hear how I have a different approach. So let's jump right in. This one you probably know, but I'm going to share it again anyway, because eating more protein is one of the best methods that I use with my clients to help them control their hunger. And I want to explain to you 2 important things here, because we could just say, well, eat more protein. Well, maybe even 3 things. So number 1 is that everyone knows protein is important for building muscle and helping maintain muscle when you're losing fat. At least if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that. But when you're losing fat, the biggest thing that protein does is it helps you stay full. Now, there's another side to this, because you have to get the right amount of calories from protein or else you're not going to be able to make this work for you. And there's 2 important points that I want you to pay attention, because this is where people screw up all the time. So are you paying attention? Maybe even taking notes. You have to eat at least 25% of your calories, up to 50% of your calories from protein to manage your hunger, to get this appetite suppressing effect from eating protein. Why is this important? Because why don't you just eat more protein? Well, a lot of people, they'll say, oh, well, I'm going to eat more steak. I'll eat 50% of my meals will be steak. Well, here's the thing. I love steak. I was at a Brazilian steak. I'm in Brazil right now. I went to a Brazilian rodizio, which is where they bring the skewers of meat and slice it off for you, and you pick it off with a pair of little tongs. I love meat. Tastes so good. However, if you look at most cuts of meat, ribeye, even sirloin, but certainly New York and filet, it's got a lot more fat in it than you realize. And this is why I have my clients track their macros using MyFitnessPal to make sure that we're setting our calories from 25% all the way up to 50%, depending on the person, to maintain their cravings and hunger, control over their cravings and hunger. So that's how you eat more protein, and that's how you dial it in scientifically using data to make sure that what you're doing is the proper way of doing it. In other words, you can't just eat more meat and expect that you're going to get enough protein, because so many times people's choices of meat, ground beef, steaks, it doesn't have as much protein as you think. Or if you're more on the vegetarian side, if you're eating beans, you're getting way more carbs than protein. So make sure you track at least for a week to dial things in, and then you can get away from tracking if you want. But that's how you eat more protein to reduce your food cravings. The second is eat satiating foods. Controlling hunger goes way beyond just eating more protein. Your stomach has stretch receptors. And when these receptors are triggered by eating a meal, they send signals to your brain to stop eating. But some foods work better than others. And this is so important because this is a big disconnect for people. People will say, what will they say? I hardly eat any food, but I can't lose weight or I gain weight. And here's the thing. It's not about the quantity of food that you eat. It's about the quantity of calories in the food that you eat. For example, you could eat what's super high, like ice cream. I love ice cream, but you really got to budget it because a small serving of ice cream, well, let's just say this. A pint of ice cream on average runs from, let's say, 900 to 1,200 calories. So let's say that you eat a meal where the meal's healthy meal, let's say, 500 calories, and it's 500-ish calories, 400 or 500-ish calories. But you have half a pint of ice cream for dessert because, hey, you ate healthy, you can squeeze in some treats, and you can if you're using the methods that I teach my clients. But let's say you're not doing that. And you have your third meal of the day and you want some ice cream and you end up eating half the pint of Ben & Jerry's cookie dough ice cream. You just eaten 600 calories on top of the 1,500 or 2,000 or 2,500 calories that you already ate, and boom, you're 600 calories over and you're not even that full, okay? So what do we do instead? Well, we need to make sure that we're eating foods that help us with our hunger in general. And then some of those cravings for something sweet after the meal, those will go away. Now, there's something else we could talk about here, the reward system of the brain, but I don't want to get into that because I'm not prepared to do it, but it's something we'll come back to. So what I want you to do is this. I want you to pause this episode right now, and I want you to Google satiety index and click on images and choose whatever image you find easiest to read and study this and think about the food choices you make versus the choices that they talk about on the satiety index. And if we look at the satiety index, we see it's broken down into proteins, fats, carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, and hyperpalatable foods. So if you haven't brought up the satiety index, either one, you're being lazy, pause this right now and do it just to take a look so that you can understand what I'm about to explain to you here. Or if you're driving or have a couple 100 pounds on your back because you're doing squats right now, well, wait until afterward, of course. But do you have it pulled up now? Great. Let's jump in. As you see, red meat and white fish actually score quite high. Then if we look at the fats, salted peanuts score quite low. Cheddar cheese, kind of in the middle. Poached eggs, kind of in the middle. You know, what's interesting about this is that refined carbohydrates, carbs and refined carbohydrates get a bad rap. But if we look at the food that scored the highest on the satiety index, it's what? Do you see it? Potatoes. And what type of potatoes are they? Well, they were boiled potatoes. Of course, you wouldn't know that unless you read the study, but I'm here telling you what it is. It's boiled potatoes. Of course, who's going to overeat boiled potatoes? And let's look at what scored the lowest. Have you found it yet? It's croissants. So croissant scored the lowest. Potatoes scored the highest. Now, a croissant isn't a carbohydrate. This is so important to get this correct because I used to think carbs make you fat, man. That's a really ignorant thing to say. Again, if you're believing that, I'm not calling you ignorant. per se, because it's tough out there to determine what is right and what is wrong. But I want to tell you this. Go and type in croissant on MyFitnessPal or CalorieKing.com and look at the calories coming from fat. Fat is 9 calories per gram. Carbohydrates and protein are 4 calories per gram. You're going to see that things like ice cream, things like croissants, they have equal numbers or even more calories coming from fat than from carbs. But it's not so much about the fat, it's about the combination of fat and carbs together. That's what really makes a food dry. It makes our brains crave more food. It makes us go yum, right? For example, let's go back to that boiled potato. Boiled potato is nothing but a carbohydrate. I mean, there's some protein in it, but how are you going to overeat boiled potatoes? If you say yes, then you got psychological problems. And that I'm 50% joking when I say that, because I saw someone on Twitter say that, I overeat oranges. This is a psychological problem, folks. That's a sleep or stress issue, something that we'll talk about in a few minutes here. But just understand that you take potatoes and you boil them, they're not so appetizing. But if we look on the hyperpalatable foods and we look at, for example, French fries, French fries score much lower than potatoes and low in general for satiety. And what is a French fry? It's a potato that's been processed into fry shape sizes, and then it's fried in oil. So again, it's a combination of the natural carbohydrates that are found in potatoes, then fried in oil, and then put some salt on it. And then you got this crispy outside, mushy inside, salty, delicious thing. And let's take it a step further. What if we took those potatoes, sliced them into chip-sized pieces, and then fried the hell out of them till it's nothing but a crispy chip, a potato chip? As you can see, those score quite low. They have 0 water in them. It's all been cooked out. French fries have some. That's what creates the mushy, delicious inside. And as you can see, so the processing affects what you eat. The big issue here is the more processed the food, and certainly if it's a combination of carbs and fat, in general, the lower the satiety. For example, we can look at white bread. White bread isn't terrible, but it scores pretty low versus brown rice in the carbohydrate section, or oranges or porridge, and of course, potatoes that score really high. So start to look at this and start to make choices based on the satiety index. You will get more control over your hunger if you do. Now, number 3 is move more. Now, here's what I want to tell you about moving more. Most people think that what moving more does is it burns calories, and it does do that. But here's the secret about exercise. Here's the secret about doing fasted cardio. Everybody says doing fasted cardio works so well, but we know from studies that it really doesn't help with fat burning at all. But what we do know is this: when you exercise more, it helps you regulate your hunger. It improves satiety. So you are less hungry when you exercise more. And this is based on, I'm looking at a chart that goes into 11 studies. It looks at 11 studies. And what's interesting is this: the studies all show the same thing. People who are sedentary, so people who barely move at all, they eat more food. So becoming sedentary doesn't downregulate your food intake. So if you think, well, I don't exercise much and exercising makes you hungry, so I'm not exercising, I must not be eating much, that's incorrect. You're going to be eating more than the version of you who exercises more. And that's why doing exercise and just getting movement in is so important. Okay? So important. In fact, what these studies show is this: they break the physical activity level into 4 different groups: low activity level, medium, high, and very high. And who eats the most, do you think? Any guess? Very high activity level eats the most food based on data from 11 studies. Who eats the second most calories per day. It's not the high or the medium, it's the low. So it makes sense that people who are super active, they eat more. In fact, their bodies probably need it. But what's interesting is that the people who have the lowest amount of activity eat just under the very high activity levels. And the best place to be is somewhere in the medium to high activity level. So if you're low, you're going to be really hungry. We're not exactly sure why that is. My guess would be stress. There might be some other satiety signaling involved. Who knows? I don't know. But what we do know is this: people who don't move much are hungrier than people who have a moderate or high activity level. And again, very high activity level, okay, you're going to be hungry. But if you're in the medium to high level, your appetite is going to be less than someone who sits on their butt all day long. So activity is not just about burning more calories, it's about regulating your hunger. And the best way to make sure you're moving enough is to track the weekly average of your steps in addition to your weekly workouts. Because just doing 3 hours, a gym routine or gym workouts or even 5, it's just not enough. Okay. It's just not enough. And what I like to do is I use an Oura Ring because it tracks my sleep, but it also tracks my steps. Now you could, of course, use a Fitbit or Apple. I'm not affiliated with Oura in any way, but the point is track your steps. And what I would tell you is 10K steps per day, when you're looking again at that weekly average, is a high but doable goal. High but doable goal. And so if you're wanting to get lean, because that's what I help people do. I don't help people become less obese or go from obese to overweight. What I love to do is I help people go from either overweight or obese to lean, not to normal, but to awesome normal, right? Like where most people want to be. And so 10K steps per day is a high but doable goal. If you're looking to get lean, that's the goal to set for yourself, and then you can adjust it from there. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but that's what I would recommend for you. So let's get to tip number 4 is to sleep better. And what you need to know about sleep is this: not sleeping enough leads to higher ghrelin levels. And if you've never heard of ghrelin, that's your hunger hormone. You know, when your stomach's grumbling because you haven't eaten, well, that's ghrelin at work. It's released in your stomach. I forget exactly by what cells, but it's released in your stomach and it causes you to feel hungry. And not sleeping enough also lowers leptin levels. Leptin, as you may have heard from other podcasts, it's your satiety hormone. It sends a message to your brain to let you know, hey, you don't need to eat, you're good. Now, here's the thing. That's the first way that sleep affects you. So you have higher ghrelin levels, you have lower leptin levels, but there's also another twist to this story about how sleep affects our food intake, our eating behavior more specifically, is that you're not wanting to eat more kale salads and super green smoothies. What do you want to eat? Your cravings for junk food go up. So you'll feel hungrier more than usual, and you'll want to eat the ice cream and the pizza and the fries and the potato chips instead of like, it's not like, oh, I'm hungry. I could eat a salad, or I could eat a hamburger or pizza or a piece of salmon and some brown rice and sauteed veggies and light olive oil. It doesn't matter. I'm just hungry. Give me something to eat. No, you're going to be like, salmon and broccoli? Let's go for the burger, fries, and shake, or whatever it is. So interestingly enough, a study published in February of 2022, earlier this year, showed that obese adults ate 270 fewer calories on average after they increased their sleep time by just an hour a night. So they took 2 groups of people and they had these obese people who were sleeping 6.5 hours or less, and they had them just sleep 1 more hour. And as a result, they ate 270 fewer calories. And I hope what you're taking away from this is unconscious. Number one, why do we get fat? Because we overeat. And we say to ourselves, but I hardly eat. But the reality is this: you eat when you're hungry and you snack when you're hungry, unless you're fighting it. And how often do we fight it? Fighting takes willpower. And if you're stressed, which we'll talk about in a second, you're not even going to remember, like, what did you eat 5 days ago for dinner? Do you remember? How about 2 weeks ago? Oh, no, I hardly eat. Okay, what'd you eat 2 weeks ago for dinner and lunch? And in fact, tell me what you ate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day for the past 2 weeks. Not just what, but how much. Can't tell me, can you? So you have no idea what you're doing. And the more stressed you are, the least idea, you'll have an even less clear idea of what you did. That's why tracking is so important. And the more sleep deprived. So a lot of this stuff, it's unconscious. You can't even, I don't even recommend trying to, willpower is not the right way to go about this, right? You've got to work with your body, not against your body. And getting more sleep is an easy way to eat fewer calories and make yourself feel better by regulating your hunger. And the best way to dial in your sleep is to track it. That's what I found. I have sleep issues. I use an Oura Ring, but again, I don't have any affiliation with them. It's just what I started using. I'm really comfortable with it. And I think it's a great product with some issues. I'm not going to get into it, but it does have some issues. But I think all the products, the wearables do. Some people have also said that Whoop bands work really well for them. So the point is, if you're a person who sleeps less than 6.5 hours a night, and you're like, oh gosh, I'm craving for sweets after dinner. Well, now you know why. It's not you, it's that you sleep poorly and that your body is just reacting normally. In fact, we have data, like research studies that show that's exactly what's going to happen when you behave in that way, when you don't prioritize your sleep. And if you're not willing to do something about your sleep and you say, no, 5.5 hours is enough for me, well, then you're going to struggle with your hunger and cravings. And it's as simple as that. So it's up to you. And let's talk about the fifth one, which is managing stress. Now, when it comes to managing stress, what we're really talking about here is that the emotional eating cycle. And while there's plenty of research on this, I'm just going to talk from my personal experience. And I've found that the clients that have the hardest time losing fat are under the highest amounts of stress. If they're managing their stress effectively, they can lose at least a pound every week. And we're talking about overweight or obese people. We're not talking, I get some clients who are normal weight and they're just doing a body composition. But usually if they're normal weight, they're managing their stress quite well, or they're not emotional eaters. So let's talk about it. One thing that you got to know is this, and there's a few important nuances here. Number one is, let's say you're really stressed and you're trying to lose fat. Well, guess what? When you go on a diet, that's stressful, isn't it? Like, oh man, I'm really stressed, and I'm stressed because I'm overweight. I'm looking at myself in the mirror. I don't like how I look. That's stressing me out too. I got to go on a diet. And then you start to cut. Let's say you do keto because, some a shirtless guy on Instagram told you it was the best way to do it, best way to lose fat, because bananas are pure sugar and just go straight to your, whatever they're saying. It's incorrect. It's bullshit, but you bought into it. It's okay. I have too. So then you're like, okay, so I got to do this a strict diet. All right. I like carbs, especially fruit. Fruit's nice to eat, but I don't want to be fat. So I'm going to go on this diet, and you're already stressed. And now you're like, man, I'm eating avocado, cheese, fatty meat, ham, steak, whatever, salmon, and putting olive oil on things and putting butter on things. But, I'm really craving a slice of bread or, just some fruit, but I can't eat it. Oh gosh, man, I would love just a slice of bread. Can I not eat this? Oh God, no, you got to do this. Do you see? That's the talk that happens, right? And so it's increasing your stress levels. So trying to get lean while you're stressed can lead to emotional eating. And another side note to this is if you're taking on the more extreme approach you take, it's also a form of stress, right? That's why with my clients, we use tracking and we just hit a calorie goal and a protein goal, and they're able to eat bread and bananas and everything else and still get way better results than other coaching programs that just try to tell them. I had a client, by the way, quick tangent, who he's going to come on soon and share his story. He worked with me, lost, I forget how much weight. He's lost 40 pounds and kept it off for a year, but he ended up, but he lost weight with me and I showed him what to do. And he ended up working, after he worked with me for a few months, he ended up working with another coach a bit later. He ended up gaining 15 pounds back that he had lost with me. And luckily he was like, oh, okay, this guy's wrong. So that's an example of like, you want to make sure that, you're taking the least extreme approach because you don't need to be extreme. And that's what I teach my clients, and they get great results. They're not only able to lose the fat, but they keep it off. So let's get back to the emotional eating cycle. What does that look like? Well, let's say something happens that upsets you. Let's say we have three big areas of our life. We have our health, wealth, and relationships. Let's say you were watching news about, a shooting or the recession, or maybe you got into a fight with your boss, or you got upset at one of your employees. He's not doing or she's not doing what they need to do to step up and earn what they're getting paid for the company. Or let's say maybe it's more like you're lonely and you're single, or you're in a relationship and fighting, and that relationship has some stress causing you stress. You feel an overwhelming urge to eat afterward. Or let's say you're working really hard and it's 5 p.m. and you've worked your ass off and been putting out fires in your business. Now it's time to go to the steakhouse and eat a big steak with a fully loaded baked potato, a Caesar salad, and share a bottle of wine with your friends and colleagues. So you go and do that, and you eat more than you should, and you feel bloated, and you've been doing this for a while, and you start to see changes in your body, and you feel bad because you look at yourself, you're like, man, I'm getting fatter, even though I'm exercising, even though I'm making money, even though, maybe your relationships are pretty good. And most of our clients, they do have good relationships. But the thing is, the stress is coming from work. And so you eat more than you should, and you feel bad because it's putting you in the opposite direction. But then you get a case of the fuck it's because, again, this is something that upsets you. And so you feel an overwhelming urge to eat again. Then you eat more than you should. Then you feel guilty and powerless over food, and that upsets you. So you feel an overwhelming urge to eat. Do you see the cycle? That's the emotional eating cycle. If you resonate with that, that's where you are. The good news is that handling your stress, it's really simple. Number one is you identify the triggers. For example, I remember a client of mine, he is in a business that, the political situation influences the laws around what he does. And the business is doing well, but and he's doing quite well, in fact, but dealing with the legislation, number one, it's really hard to figure out the truth because there's so much spin from both sides. So I remember him saying, man, I just want to read what the law is. And then there's all this like emotional opinion stuff. And I just want to read just the facts, right? And it's kind of hard to find that information. And then he has to deal with some of the people, from what I remember. So that was very stressful for him. So you got to identify these triggers. What are the triggers? Another one of my clients, he was building his business. He was starting a new branch of his business. He was based in Florida, but starting a new branch of his business in California. And it was stressful to do because he was in meetings very early and flying all over the place. And even though that's not like, oh, my life sucks, can't pay my bills and my dog died and my wife left me, it's still a stress, even though it's a
like on paper, it's a positive thing. But if you're flying, there's travel stress. There's shifting time zones. If you're going from one time zone to another, like going from Florida to California, there's going to be circadian rhythm stress. So you have to identify the triggers, what's causing the stress. Then you have to ask yourself 2 questions. Now that I've identified the stress, there's 2 ways of dealing with it. Number 1 is I can solve the underlying cause of stress. And number 2, I can develop other ways of coping with the stress other than eating and drinking alcohol. So solving the underlying cause of stress can be a bit challenging. And I'll give a personal example here. I was in Portugal I'm going to forget the months here, but I was in Portugal for 1 month. And then I flew to Austin, Texas for an event. It was stressful. It's a time change. So it's a good thing I'm going to this event. I'm excited to be at the event. I had a major breakthrough at the event, but still, you can't get away from the circadian rhythm stress from, that comes from traveling through time zones. I went for it was a 7-hour time difference. It kicked my butt. And I was eating more because I was like, because, it was a catered event. They had dessert and I was eating plenty of the dessert. And then after that month, because I stayed there, I went to the event, then I hung out at my cousin's. I love my cousin, love my family, love his wife and my nephews, his 2 sons. And technically they're like second cousins or whatever, but they're, the age difference, they're like nephews, right? So I loved them. It was good. But then it was a change of environment, which was stressful. And then I flew to Portugal, spent another month there, and now I'm in Brazil. And I've been here for a month. So changing locations is stressful because you change your routines and have to adopt new ones. It's stressful if there's a time change involved. It's stressful here in Brazil a little bit because now and in fact, I've been doing quite well here, but I had to relearn Portuguese because in Portugal, I didn't need to use it at all. People spoke English and the Portuguese they speak is very different than Brazilian Portuguese. So I didn't really speak Portuguese at all there, didn't learn more Portuguese at all there. But now that I'm back in Brazil, I'm having to communicate with people and you have to speak Portuguese here. Eu preciso falar português porque pessoas aqui não falam inglês. Okay? You got to learn, right? People don't speak English here, so I've had to learn Portuguese. So that's a stress too. Because I'm like, you're feeling a bit lonely. So anyway, again, how do you solve the underlying cause of that stress? Well, I tell you, I'm making sure that I'm staying in Brazil for 3 months. No hopping around every month because it's stressing me out, right? A month is like a short time to live. It's a very short time to stay in a place and then travel to a new place. So the way I solved this stress was by staying here. And staying in a good location. I can walk to the gym and there's a decent gym here. I've also found ways to cope with the stress. For example, I was feeling quite stressed out the other day on a Friday, week and a half ago. And instead of I found myself irritable and I knew I was like, well, my life is pretty good right now. Financially, the business is doing well. I'm actually in a good place, even though Brazil, it's taken some time to adapt, but I've been here for a month now. So what's going on? Well, I felt the stress building up. So I went and did a float tank. And if you've never done a float tank, it's very relaxing and it's just amazing. It helps you relax so much. It just forces you to relax. So that's a way that I've dealt with stress other than eating. I've also made sure that I'm going out and doing social things. So anyway, handling stress is simple. You identify the triggers. You ask yourself, how do I solve the underlying cause of stress? And then you develop other ways of dealing with stress than eating food and drinking alcohol. Now, it's simple, but it's hard to do and can require the help of an expert. And to be honest, that is where most of the work happens. People think, oh, so you're doing all this complicated workout programming and nutrition tactics to drive results with your clients, huh?
and get those amazing body transformations. No, I'm helping them handle their stress. That's what I do. You think it's not sexy? That's not exciting for you because you want to know about new supplements? Guess what? The results I get are sexy as hell. Shout out to all the body transformations, the people who've gotten body transformations with me. They get compliments on their body all the time, while other folks are still trying to figure out, so do I have to use glycerin soap instead of normal soap because I'm poisoning myself and I can't lose fat loss, or it's my age, or making excuses and not getting results? I get sexy results. So what I'm saying may not be sexy to you, but it's the truth and it works. Just look at the people on my website. And again, I'm just trying to get through to you because I've been that person who made those excuses. And I'm telling you, man, I'm so glad I'm so far from that now. But I'm telling you, the problems are your strategies aren't good, or you're too stressed and you're not able to follow through on whatever strategies you have because of that stress. And once you implement the strategies that we've talked about here, we can recap them real quick for you. Then you're going to start to get better results. So what are we talking about here? What are we talking about? We're talking about number 1, eat more protein. Number 2, eat satiating foods. Number 3, make sure you're moving enough. Number 4, sleep better. Number 5, manage your stress. And if you do these things, staying on track with whatever type of approach you want is going to be so much easier. All right, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed today. And more importantly, I want to ask you, what is the one that resonated with you today? What are you going to go and take action on? Because too many of us, we listen to things and get this great information. And what do you do with it? Oh man, this is awesome. I just learned something new. Cool. Go take action on it. Build that get shit done muscle. Get that take action muscle built by doing something right away. That's all I got for you. Hope you have an amazing weekend, and I'll speak to you on Monday. And on Monday, we're going to have another special guest on our show. His name is Gil Carvalho, and he's a physician, a research scientist. I mean, the guy has both an MD and a PhD. He's also the host of the Nutrition Made Simple YouTube channel, which breaks down science-based healthy eating and provides weekly tips for a healthy diet. Now, here's the thing I like. That's like the professional version. But the reason I wanted Gil on the show is that he is a guy who has the scientific knowledge, but he's also very open-minded. So what you're going to hear on Monday's episode is honest conversation about how you can better discern who's telling the truth out there when it comes to nutrition information, and also about some of the things you need to be aware of that are working against you in our environment. Such a great conversation, and I know I'm going to have Gil on the show again. I know also that if you love my interviews, you're going to love this one. It was a great conversation. So tune in on Monday and speak to you then.
Do you need help losing fat while still enjoying your life? I mean, who doesn't know how to lose fat when they're at home, never going out to a restaurant, eating chicken and broccoli? Everyone can do that. But if you enjoy your social life, spending time with friends, going out to dinner, trying new restaurants, well, that's what we help our clients do. We help successful entrepreneurs, executives, and other high-performing professionals to burn fat, grow muscle, boost their energy, reduce their stress, all while enjoying their social life, going on vacation, and growing their business. If you're ready to have the body you deserve, to look and feel younger, and to say goodbye to time-consuming workouts and strict diets, we can help you. The best place to go is to watch my free masterclass. Go to legendarylifeprogram.com/free. There's one masterclass for men, there's another for women. Again, go to legendarylifeprogram.com/free to watch my free body breakthrough masterclass.